Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 222 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. We have a special guest today, someone I've been looking forward to talking with for it seems like years now, but it probably is years. Robert Weber or Bob Weber. If you're on LinkedIn and you're in the immigration space, you've definitely seen his posts. They're always very informative, like you learn stuff. So it's interesting to see someone who's that dedicated, put that much quality content, especially on the LinkedIn forum. So we're going to talk about that and his new practice and his background, all that kind of stuff. Before we start, I want to mention that the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox magazine issue 3 is out. Hyper focus on the O and A visa. Go to immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com/magazine and you can check that out along with the previous magazines. And hopefully we'll have episode 4 out, a general issue, around 20 articles in about a week or two. If we're lucky, we'll see. So I'll create a better system and pop these out more faster. But I also want to thank the other sponsors. For example, Tsang's Law, Tsangs Law. One of our colleagues, Joseph Tsang, Tsang Law is the website, but Joseph Tsang here in Southern California provides a lot of services to other immigration attorneys in terms of backhouse support, international offices, particularly in Taiwan and China, and also teaching how to do cases, doing co-partnerships, all this kind of stuff. He's got the law firm fit for that. So even if you get all of a sudden a bunch of cases, he has a team that could take on the bandwidth to help you out if you're a small firm or if you're trying to pick up a practice area. Check out our interview we did with Joseph Tsang on the podcast. It'll give you a lot of information. And just check his website out, tsangslaw.com, TSANGSLAW.com. And he always has articles in our magazine, particularly the next one coming out. He has some good business advice stuff in there. And finally, if you're interested in learning about the marriage green card, the fiance green card, all this kind of stuff to practice in that area, you're switching over to becoming a lawyer like that from a different practice area, or if you're law student just graduated, email me at info at immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com because we have a bunch of courses and stuff to get you started on that. So with that, Robert, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. I've appreciated your publications and your work in the immigration space. And it's, I don't know, the day after Christmas weekend. So I'm wearing my festive Santa suit. We also had a snowstorm here in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. So we're very much in winter mode.
Yes, I mean we've had rainstorms here in Los Angeles, but nothing compared to what you guys get over there. I mean, it's like you could die if you don't dress up. Is that right over there? If you don't dress warm?
Yeah, no, it's cold, but I have heard that in Northern California, one of my colleagues is actually on vacation north of San Francisco, and he sent me a picture today of a snowstorm, and I said, "Wait, is this your house here?" And he's like, "No, this is where we're staying at my in-laws." So, and that does, the weather does segue into an immigration topic. I know a lot of our clients waited for much of 2021 to travel between the travel bans and vaccinations. And finally, I think towards the end of the year, people were starting to feel comfortable about traveling. But now we've got Omicron, the new variant. But then the thing that happened this weekend, which I know there was a little bit of this at Thanksgiving, but I think there were over 2,000 flights canceled in the United States. And
Yeah.
so I think clients are stuck all over the place. And I feel like the staycation is sort of the way to go here until we figure out a little bit more about the variants and the flight. It's flight crews, I guess, are getting Omicron or something.
Yeah, it spreads rapidly. I mean, we canceled our vacation and stayed in town, which kind of sucked. I was really looking forward to finally going on vacation after 2 years. It always helps me out, like just freshen up my mind about work and life and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, I have consultations every day with couples who are like doing concept processing for marriage cases, and I'm like, well, be prepared. We're probably not going to have anything moving for 2 years or so. Like if we're starting now, and it's always like you're telling somebody they have some sort of disease that's incurable or something when you give them that kind of news. And
Yeah, yeah. But you can always tell them they'll save on the, they will probably won't have to file an I-751 for a
yeah.
conditional green card. Try to make lemonade out of the lemons. I'm working hard to try to. I always like to embrace contrarian, or at least consider contrarian perspectives, and I feel like pessimism is pretty easy for us in the immigration practice. So I think the contrarian perspective is to try to be optimistic. Although I think 2022, as we're going into the new year here, it's probably going to be more of the same of what we've seen in 2021. I think there's going to be a lot of backlogs at USCIS. I think DOL processing is going to be slow. I think the consulates, I mean, there is some innovation, expanded, interview waivers and things like that. But I mean, I get people contacting me to say, oh, does this mean I don't have to, can I just get my, mail it in from the US? And it's like, well, no. So it's not, there's still a lot of headwinds. But I think the one, in a weird way, positive thing for an immigration lawyer, and I think in some ways, the people who watch your podcast, it's a little bit preaching to the choir, because these are people who are trying to stay up on the advanced practice. But I think for those of us who try to stay pretty up to date on advanced practices, it's an opportunity where quality representation really matters.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Just so many moving parts, and it kind of goes to the stuff you post on LinkedIn. Every time I read it, I'm like, immigration law is so complex, and there's just so many different things you have to learn. I remember reading one about O1s where it's like, if you do an extension, you get 1 year, but if you do a new one instead of extension, you get the 3 year. And there's a million and one things like
Yeah,
that.
that's true. Yeah, yeah. Now that rule was better when you could count on being able to leave the
Yeah.
country. Now, now I haven't done that approach, but yeah, no, that's right. And I think in immigration law, the difficulty is that the system's really screwed up and the rules are very complex. And so it is very frustrating for clients, both companies, employers and individuals. But the opportunity there is that because it's so complex and screwed up, and because employers need workers and individuals want to be able to immigrate, that you can really add a lot of value by being up to date and being very creative about approaches. I think one of the things that I'm seeing now, I started my own practice, as just a few months ago. I had my own practice for 15 years, and I joined a big law firm, worked there for a couple years, and now I'm back on my own, and I've been adding staff relatively quickly, because I see that at least from my practice, one of the places that I want to position my practice is being able to serve clients quickly in the employment based space. And I think that a lot of law firms just have capacity issues because, everybody's just burned out: lawyers, staff, paralegals, everybody's burned out. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is stay ahead of the burnout for staff. I mean, that's actually what I've been pitching to people who are coming to my firm, is like, look, maybe the compensation is going to be comparable, but we're going to really commit to letting you have your weekends and having support,
Yeah.
so that your caseload. And it's hard to do. And, I mean, it's still in the experimental mode in a way, because I'm only a few months into this, but hopefully that's going to provide some lasting benefits to the team, and also to clients who I think are increasingly anxious about how, I mean, things take a long time at the government, and as you know, John, it's not so easy to get them to go faster, and so they really lean on us. You guys go faster, lawyers go faster, go
Yeah.
faster, go faster. It's like, well, we're humans.
Yeah.
uh,
And then there's the bottom line question with that, though, is one of the models for immigration law firms, especially the ones that make good money, is you just bring in people and you dump a bunch of work, you burn them out, and then you just go through numbers, and you see like some firms just constantly going to turnover, but
I
they're
think
basically
that's true.
growing.
Yeah, no, that's right. And that's been a model for sure. And I think that, people have made a lot of money on that. And I think that model, to some extent, still exists and will keep existing. But we'll see if, that is sustainable here. I definitely feel that in the last year, particularly in the last year. I mean, the first year of the pandemic, we were all freaked out, and no one was quitting because, I mean, you didn't know what was happening. You thought the whole world
Yeah.
was falling apart. But now, since the basically the vaccine has come out, and people are like, okay, there are ways to stay safe in this environment, but do I want to work the way that I'm working and the amount
Yeah.
that I'm working? And the other thing that's a real, I think, significant game changer for the immigration bar is this work from home, because you really can, with experienced people. I think it's harder for entry level people. You can retain paralegals or attorneys who are in other states and work remotely, and that creates more competition for talent. But I think that each of us as practitioners, we just have to figure out where we want to position our practice. uh, but I do think there's opportunities into the new year. I think one of the things that's going to blow us all away is the H-1B cap. I think that the number of submissions is going to be astronomical, and it's going to get to maybe this year, 2022, but it's going to get to the point where the H-1B cap is going to feel like it's kind of useless because of the odds are so tough. And the reason for that is because it's not that hard to submit an application. And
Yeah.
so there are people who are gaming it. And I've done consultations, some of the very big, companies that have a lot of H-1Bs, they just have everyone basically in a database and they just submit them. And so I had an interesting consultation with the guy who was trying to ask me why his big employer got him an H-1B when he could have come over on an L-1A. And this guy's from India, and that's a big difference. I mean, he really would have liked to come over on an L-1A, and he has a spouse that would like to get work authorization. And it was because literally the firm had just they didn't really think things through. They just had him in there from like 2 years ago. And
Yeah.
then when he won the lottery, they're like, okay, we're just processing your H-1B. And they told him just come on an H-1B, and he doesn't, so he gets here and he's like, wait a minute, why did I do that? And I think that there's hundreds, thousands of applications going in that way. And I think that's going to increase. And it's just a hard thing for everyone to deal with. And the economy's good, so employers do have a lot of job opportunities. I think it's particularly hard for the smaller employers or even the smaller firms who, it seems like the really big companies and the really big firms, they have it all kind of baked in.
Yeah.
But the smaller companies and the smaller firms, everybody's sort of proceeding in good faith, and then realizing like, wait, the system's it's really kind of messed up.
Yeah, there's
So I
five
think, yeah,
companies that get all of them, and it really just
yeah,
comes out of
yeah,
the
yeah, no, that's right. And they have it baked into their pricing and their profitability. And
yeah.
so I think that looking for, cap exemptions or trying to sponsor people straight for green cards, or individuals trying to self petition, I think there's going to be more and more interest in that going straight to perm. There's a number of, but that's sort of a paradigm shift in trying to educate employers that maybe don't do a lot of immigration. I recently consulted with an engineer from Vietnam, and he's trying to explain to his employer, like, we don't need to do the H-1B. We can just go straight for a green card. And he's right. And so that's just a question of trying to discuss all that with the employer. um, but I think that's those are some of the things into 2022, um, that I'm looking forward to. I mean, I've said for a long time that law practice, if you really break it down, is there's sort of three parts. There's getting the work, doing the work, and getting paid. And so we basically, as lawyers, have to figure out, well, where's our bottleneck? I mean, is our bottleneck getting the work? Some people have no problem getting the work. Sometimes the hardest part is doing the work.
Yeah.
Of course, if your business model, the hardest part is getting paid, then that's a that's a hard one. You got to really revisit that. But on the first two, and then related to that is like, well, where do you want to be in 2022 as an immigration attorney? Do you want to be doing the work, or do you want to be getting the work? And sometimes maybe it's not what you want to be doing, but what does your firm need you to do?
Yeah.
If you're the leader, the owner of your firm, you probably need to be more on the getting the work. I mean, and you need to make sure, and this is again the idea of having things staffed up properly. But it's hard to have things staffed up properly when there's such a shortage and there's so much need. But treating your people well, hopefully, and especially if you're a small place and you might not be able to compete on salary. Although I will say that as a small place, when you start interacting with people, non partners and associates, the compensation maybe. I mean, I think some of us in smaller who have been in smaller firms maybe better understand the value of a good immigration paralegal.
Yeah. There's
Um,
a lot of stuff you talked about. I mean, going back to the H-1B, when they made the new system where you could just put the lottery in for the $10, it sounded like good because you only keep going with the work unless you're chosen. But they had this weird, probably expected situation where people would just overly file. And then we have these caps where like they have three different times where they
yeah, yeah,
use the
yeah, yeah.
lottery, and that's a peculiar situation when people gave up, they went to their home countries, found new jobs, and all of a sudden they get a notice that they're chosen the H-1B 8 months later. It's like it's kind of a bizarre situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, if you remember, the electronic lottery system was implemented during the Trump years,
Mhm.
and there was not very much during the Trump years that would be characterized as pro-immigrant. And so you do wonder whether this is sort of the evil genius of Stephen Miller or whatever
Yeah,
to recognize that, hey, if we reduce the barriers to entry for this H1B cap lottery so that everyone can put in $10 and play, it's going to blow up the lottery and sort of make the H1B category. I mean, I've speculated that it's increasingly like the DV lottery, right? And so
yeah,
now, of course, the DV lottery is only available to certain countries, but nobody says, oh, well, our plan is you're going to win the DV lottery and then blah blah blah, right? Because the chances of winning are so low. Well, historically, you'd say, well, all right, we hire you and then we try for the H1B cap, and we have three tries. Assuming the person has a STEM degree, and during those three tries, we should be able to get it. But I don't know. I think there's just going to be more and more of like, maybe not, and maybe you don't want to wait that long. I think to your point, and actually, I just wanted to shout out that O1 issue was excellent. There were a lot of great pieces in there, but I think the O1 is the natural. Well, I mean, there's various strategies, obviously, to deal with the H1B cap, but the O1 being one of them. And I think, well, and one other point that I want to make on this timing thing, I was recently consulting with a guy and he's like, well, I'm going to try for this H1B. And if I don't get it this year, because it's my last year and my OPT will expire in June, then I'll just go for EB1A. And I'm like, so you're going to do the lottery and then you're going to find out in April. And then somehow you think you're going to put together an EB1A and file it. And then what? I mean, you still need an EAD and that takes like 6 months. Right? I mean,
yeah,
and to be honest, I didn't think he had that great of an EB1A profile. And I think people are totally underestimating like what their plan B strategies are.
yeah,
And that also plays into this capacity issue. I mean, if you're a lawyer in a firm and you're telling clients like, okay, try for the lottery, and if you don't get the lottery, we'll go for an O1. I mean, do you realize you might end up with dozens of people who want to go for O1s like in the middle of April after the lottery? And do you have enough staff to do dozens of O1s? So, and, maybe you do, but I think this all comes down to this weird supply and demand. I mean, there's just so much demand and there's so little supply of the visas and supply of the staff.
yeah.
And trying to get your head around that, I think, is one of the challenges of the new year.
But speaking of the EB1A option, a lot of people are selling the national interest waiver, and people say they get approved. I see on LinkedIn even, but it seems like people are saying NIW anything. If you have a breath and you have a pulse, you can get NIW. And I do EB1As. I haven't worked on NIWs. But is the standard that simple, or is it just selling a bill of goods? It seems.
Well, it's interesting about that. I think I mean, like a lot of things you hear about in the immigration world, I mean, there's something true in there, but then there's always this temptation to sort of overstate things. I do think that, for non-India born, non-China born, STEM oriented, PhD types, that EB2 NIW should be looked at. I mean, I used to joke, it's particularly after, in 2008, after 2008, and there was a lot of stimulus and everything. I mean, one of the positive things about the government being involved in so many aspects of the economy is that you can argue national interest in a lot of different areas. And the matter of Danisar test, is an improvement on the older standard NISDOT. It's not that you can file anything and get it approved, but it is a standard that can be worked with. I find it much more reasonable than EB1A. I think that the thing that's hard, particularly for people born in India and China, is they want or need a green card and they want to go for EB1A, and they read the criteria and they think, oh, I can put this under this and this under this.
Yeah.
And we know, I mean, it doesn't exactly work like that. I mean, yeah, you won this travel award in your sophomore year to go to a conference. But they're not going to give you any credit for that. So, but yeah, I do think EB2 NIW, I'm not a lawyer. I know there's some lawyers out there who do. I mean, I do a fair number of these, but there's some firms that do a huge volume from what I can tell, and they have money back guarantees and all kinds of,
Yeah.
you know,
Bells and
things. I
whistles.
mean, yeah, bells and whistles. And whatever. I think that it's a market, right? So people, lawyers can offer what they want to offer, and I think clients should just be, discerning in who they find credible, and also maybe have some humility that you might be pretty good in your field, but EB1A, for example, is a very high
Yeah.
standard. But I do think for the Iranian clients, EB2 NIW is good. And, the other thing that's interesting is because of self petition. I mean, I've worked on a number of EB2 NIW cases for people who are outside the US. So they, weren't even here. I mean, of course, now one of the problems is everything's really slow. But it is a strategy, and I think it's going to continue. Although one of the things I worry about into 2022, maybe it's not going to be a problem in 2022, but I think eventually it's going to be a problem. Is that EB2, EB1 other countries and EB2 other countries is going to start getting backlogged,
Yeah.
and then it's quite a mess.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's going those options of filling them up. But one other question is, if someone is doing basic OPT, could they pull off? Let's say they're not in India, not China. Could they pull off like filing, starting the perm process right when they graduate and when they find the first job and make it to file the I-485 by the time they graduate, or 1 year is not enough?
Well, if they're just with the basic OPT, it's pretty tough, and that's But if they have the STEM OPT and they have 3 years, then that might be enough time to do it. And particularly, those STEM degree positions, there really is a shortage. And so if the employer is open to being like, well, let's just go for perm process, that is a potential doable process. On that comment about 12 months, one of the things that we were looking at is F1 nurses. So traditionally, we would do F1 nurses and then file the Schedule A I-140, and not, they weren't traditionally eligible for H-1Bs. But the challenge with that is that the prevailing wage, which you need, takes time to get. And then the I-485 EAD takes, I mean, a ridiculously long
Yeah,
time
who
to
knows?
get.
Yeah,
And so that was becoming a problem. But a very interesting development, and actually I'm working on an article with a law clerk on this, is I think 2022 could be the year of the emergence of pretty easy, well, I don't want to get too hard, but possible H-1Bs for registered nurses. Traditionally, you could maybe get H-1Bs for specialty nurses and not for registered nurses, but there's been some changes in the language of the OOH and ONET to suggest a bachelor's degree as a minimum. And we know there's a huge shortage of nurses nationwide. And if you could start getting H-1Bs for nurses, cap exempt H-1Bs, that is going to be a big practice area. There's still challenges because there's licensure and other things, but between if you can get them H-1Bs at cap exempt employers and then do Schedule A, and I know there's some lawyers and law firms that almost specialize in just doing nurses,
Yeah.
but I think that the practice is probably going to expand to more of us who we have just a handful of them, but not a big area. But I think that's a 2022 area to look at. If you have clients in the healthcare space or I mean, we kind of know the traditional. I mean, there's a lot of Filipino nurses, but if
Yeah.
you're, connected to those communities, I think it's something to look at the possibility of H-1Bs for nurses.
I mean, just going into 2022, I mean, you're ramping up a practice. I'm doing the same. I went from full solo to hire associate. I'm going to probably get another associate in the year, some paralegal staff, and just go hard with it because there's a lot of market openings and really growth possible. And I'm kind of, taking myself out of the actual case handling other than quality control and review and client communications, and just, putting more focus on, be able to get the name out there. What are your plans? You've already discussed it briefly, but how does 2022 look for you, business and personally?
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, similar to you. I mean, I'm trying to scale my practice. There's certain clients that, corporate clients that I'd like to be able to represent, and I think they feel more comfortable when they can see that there's a team and it's not a
Yeah,
true solo situation. But one of the things that I think is important is, you need to have a mix of people and experience levels and things, and it's hard to if you have everyone that's entry level, then that's a lot of training for the, partner level person. That's what I've experienced. So I'm, arguably paying a premium for experienced people that are good. But, I think that's part of my strategy. I have some ideas about some geographic areas to approach. I think that the rural economy in the U.S. Here in the Midwest, there's a big labor shortage. Obviously, there's things like H-2As for seasonal agricultural workers, but those are challenging in various ways. But I think there's opportunities in the agricultural community. I think one of the really interesting practice areas, and I've been talking with a couple lawyers and even a business broker, is E2s, not EB5, but E2s, where, one of the trends that this business broker mentioned to me is there's a lot of baby boomers who kind of, if they've weathered their business through the pandemic, they're ready to retire,
yeah,
but there's not as many people available to buy their businesses. These are small, either retail businesses or small manufacturing or various, kind of small businesses that can be successful. And there's real opportunity to try to connect buyers, international buyers. This isn't like, huge M&A type deals, but these are
yeah,
small opportunities. And business brokers, some of them, and maybe again, this is a Midwest thing. I suppose if you're in Miami or Southern California, business brokers and immigration lawyers are working closely together all the time. But here in the Midwest, I think it's less of a common thing. And I think that there's some real opportunities, and maybe even talking to, we've already had some very preliminary discussions with in certain rural areas because there are government officials who want to promote economic development, and part of that is getting businesses into their towns. And to some extent, if they had like three restaurants but two of them closed because of the pandemic, there's a market there. The people still want to go out to eat, but there's no
yeah,
place to go. Now they might have to embrace falafel or something, but there's some opportunities there for E2s for small business that, at least for my practice, traditionally hasn't been a big area. But I think, and in some ways, it's kind of stimulating because there's a lot of creativity in that and collaboration and working with different professionals. And so I think that's an important part of an immigration practice, is not feeling stale, right? Like if you just do
yeah.
the same kind of cases all the time, besides intellectually kind of being boring, then you just sort of, it's like it's a little bit stale. So looking for things to excite you about your practice.
For sure, and immigration is full of that. I mean, I backed. undid a lot of my practice area to go marriage based and also solo because it was too overwhelming doing EB1As and L1s. It's just too time consuming. But now that I'm building back, I'm getting out of that field. And L1As kind of worry me because of the inconsistency how they're adjudicated. It's really frustrating. EB1As as well. What I like about EB1As is that their criteria, which you can kind of argue, even though I see constantly colleagues having to file lawsuits for even like really simple stuff that should match the criteria. So it gets really frustrating, but these options are available and they're there. So if you have the bandwidth to do them and handle the art fees that are ridiculous, potentially even doing litigation yourself or having that planned out with a colleague in case it pops up, it's kind of one of those things you have to tell clients about from the very beginning. You might have to sue to win, even though you're correct. The government won't do it until a judge orders them to do it, or at least embarrass the government in front of the government for them to be able to do it.
Yeah, well, and of course, that's one thing we haven't talked about here is, we are in we've gone through year one of the Biden administration, although some of the things that maybe we had hoped, I mean, there's definitely been some, policy changes that are positive, but there's so much that can be done.
Yeah.
And if the Biden administration really gets in there with the new USCIS director and others, I posted on LinkedIn several months ago that, we had during the Trump administration, we had like Bizarro Superman, the person next to the president who was pretty commit. I mean, he was very committed to, trying to promote policy changes that would restrict immigration. We need the opposite of that. We need somebody who gets up every day in the administration and seems to have power. And I think so. EB1A, L1A, these are classic areas where if they could just get the agency to use the actual law, like not to use what has built up over time. This would be incredible for immigration and doesn't require Congress. Just get the agency, whether it's through, headquarters memos or lawsuit settlements, so H4 EADs and L2 EADs. I mean, that was a good settlement there where the Department of Justice like came in and said, okay, look, we're going to settle this case and it's going to be pretty favorable. And the slowness at USCIS is going to be mitigated. It'd be great if we saw that on L1As and L1Bs, frankly, EB1A, O1s. I mean, if they were explicit in promoting O1s for founders, that
Yeah.
would be a really positive development. They could issue guidance on that. EB1A, they could create some precedent decisions. So hopefully in 2022, there's going to be an appetite for that. I think you and I have talked about, I mean, the southern border is a mess. And obviously the Biden administration has taken a lot of hits on their approach there, whether it was the Haitians or others. And it's too bad that, the southern border is a complicated situation, but they should be able to still do things in employment based immigration, or even speeding up I-130s. This whole thing, I mean, we joke a little bit about 2 years apart, but that's just crazy, right? Or, I mean, going back to obviously there was a time not that long ago when I-130s in certain instances could be processed at USCIS offices in
Yeah.
country.
Exactly. Yeah.
That would be amazing, right? And that doesn't require Congress. That they could do that, right? They could just and they don't have to reset it. Well, anyway, we could go on and on about what they could do, but there's a lot that they could do, and I'm hoping that in 2022. I mean, I'm trying to be measured about that. Certainly, they've reduced our expectations for the first year,
Yeah.
but hopefully in the second year they'll realize. I mean, we saw recently. I mean, I think immigration reform in Congress is dead. So let's just get on to some administrative improvements. Um, and hopefully that's in the year ahead here.
Yeah, other than DACA creating some sort of system for them to adjust or naturalize, I think immigration reform really it doesn't make sense for a lot of the preference-based categories. It's really about just agency reading the law in a different fashion, which is doable. Whether it's even in regards to how they count visa numbers, that's a big deal for EB-5 in particular. Figuring out what the EB-5 program is when it comes to investors, because that program every day is different, doesn't make any sense. And then it seems like they're finally going to put through premium processing for EADs and the like. They put some sort of executive stuff. I saw a listing that they're going to move that forward. But $2,500 for an EAD is steep. I don't think it's justified. But hey, some people, if they need it, at least they could pay 2,500 premium processing on that. But I just don't see it. If they're going to do something, they could have done a lot of benign kind of stuff till now. It just seems like immigration is just a talking point to get the votes. That's my pessimistic view on how they handle it.
Yeah, well, and I think that hopefully there are um, constituencies, stakeholders in the economy that have, large says, the big tech companies, the Chamber of Commerce, even the, nurses and physician
Yeah.
groups. And hopefully there'll just be a little bit more sophisticated discussion about solutions. I feel like it's just too much of like, well, we need to legalize everyone. No, we don't legalize anyone. It's like, okay, can we just like, we're not agreeing on that, but there's plenty of other things where we could move the ball forward. And so hopefully there will be some of that in 2022. But I think your space, like what you're doing with the toolbox, is a great thing. I think these webinars, in some ways, creating a little bit of competition for ALA. ALA is great; they have great resources and great conferences, but there are a lot of niche areas, and I think you know. Obviously, I use LinkedIn a lot. It's been great for my sort of brand awareness, and I learn a lot. I mean, I learn. I post things, but I certainly read what other people put up. I think it's a very valuable tool for me, but everyone has to figure out what they want to do for their marketing. I'm a guy who is pretty happy to, post something in the middle of the night and, get 1,000 views and feel like, all right, well, look, I couldn't meet 1,000 people at how many happy hours. So, um, yeah, so I'd say that there's a lot of opportunity in 2022 for immigration lawyers. But you do have to sort of think about what you want to do and be realistic. And it's weird to say there's opportunity because it sounds bad. Like 'cause since the system's so screwed up, it seems like you're saying, the system's terrible for the immigrants, but this is a great way for us to make money. It's like, no, that's not it. It's like, look, it's a great opportunity to be, the system screwed up. And so if you're valuable, if you know how to maneuver or you can be realistic or be successful, that there's value for you there. It's like saying, hey, there's people who are hungry. If you build a restaurant and you serve good food, you'll have a lot of customers, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, I'm optimistic about that, and I mean, frankly, that's one of the reasons that I'm glad to be back on my own is that I can pursue the opportunities at the pace that I want to. Um, I think that when you're in bigger organizations, there's just a lot of stakeholders and priorities, and so they may not, want to grow or develop areas at the same pace. And hey, life goes by quickly, and so you want to be able to pursue things, which of course is what our clients want too, right? They realize if you're an EB2 Indian and you're toiling away waiting for your priority date, you're like, my whole career I'm going to be a software engineer at this company because you know, I can't leave. And so people are desperate to look for other ways around that. And there isn't always, but trying to be creative about that, or at least trying to
You mentioned I had a
um,
consultation today with an Indian who just got the green card, and the question always comes up: How soon can I leave? Because as soon as they get the green card, they could double their salary because they've been stuck in this H-1B system, this semi-indentured servitude. And my policy, at least in Los Angeles, the West Coast, I've seen flexibility. If they even leave immediately, they have understanding. Some colleagues say you have to wait 6 months, a year. Their field offices later on for naturalization will be strict. I haven't seen that on the West Coast. Do you have any direction you
yeah,
go
no,
on
I
this?
say you can leave right away. My view is like, look, if the only caveat is if you were doing immigrant visa processing, right? So let's say you were sponsoring a nurse from abroad and they show up and 2 days later they quit. We see this because they get to Minnesota in the winter and they're like, what the? And then they want to move to California. They're going to have a problem there because they never worked at the employer. And so then there's this question of, well, what was your intent? But if you've been toiling away for years and years at the employer and you went through adjustment of status, and look, there's AC-21 portability, adjustment portability. If you
Yeah,
can change employers while you're in adjustment, then I mean, from my perspective, you definitely can change. And I would litigate that if it came up. I
yeah,
do realize, there's sort of a conservative approach. And look, I haven't been to every field office and everything, but one of the things about field offices, which you may have seen, is they often know nothing about employment based immigration. They have the most primitive understanding. And so, I think that you could push back on that. But we are seeing some Indians here. Well, we saw some in earlier in 2021. The approvals have been slow going here in the last couple months, but there are people getting their green cards who've been waiting a long time, and it kills me to try to tell them, well, you got to wait 6 months longer,
Yeah.
especially like you say, in this economy where there's so many opportunities, or maybe some of them want to start their own firms or start something
Mm.
on the side. I'm like, look, this is it. You've waited your entire middle-aged life to get your green card. Get on with it,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I'm definitely okay with that, and I haven't seen problems with that. I mean, now that I'm saying it out loud, probably come
Yeah,
to
it's
regret saying
educational,
that.
general information only, not intended for individual legal advice.
That's
Exactly.
right. Yeah, yeah. But also, it's like a lot of things you feel like, well, if you say it out loud, you've ruined it, right? Like something
Yeah.
works.
Well, good thing
But
we said it in like minute 40, so only the hardcore listeners are still on will be hearing this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. Mainly, I appreciate the opportunity to use my Santa suit one more time this season. And I hope that we can maybe regularly have some discussions here into the new year. I have more flexibility of that with my new firm, and looking forward. I didn't realize we got another issue coming out here in a week for your publication, so that'll be great.
Yeah, it was out a month ago, but between this and that, it keeps grinding on. But I'm going to get it out and create a better system, get on consistently, and hopefully have you and your associate in associates in the program. There's so much I want to talk with you about. I definitely pray we could do it a monthly thing because you have so much fun stuff to talk about. I'm sure the audience is really going to get a kick out of hearing your perspectives on things. But it might be in a rush to go, but I want people to know about your LinkedIn page. You have the best number one immigration lawyer LinkedIn page, and it's constantly being updated. Tell me more how you got into that, how much time you spend on that, and how it produces results and stuff if you can. Because I
Yeah.
really always promote people getting involved in social media and educating, and that's the way, not selling, educating.
Yeah, well, my thing. I've been on LinkedIn for a long time. For the first few years, I didn't have a premium uh, membership or whatever subscription, but I've changed to that premium subscription now. And I'd say that particularly in the last couple of years, I think it was like a combination of you got to the pandemic. Well, I guess also I had joined this bigger firm and I wanted to use the platform to develop business opportunities. But I've always viewed the idea of LinkedIn. I mean, I think some lawyers view it as just sharing developments in the law, like when USCIS issues a new
Yeah.
policy, or here last week, the interview waiver. And that, I think, in my mind, is sort of like LinkedIn 1.0, like sharing news items. And there's value in that for sure. And I do some of that. But what I try to do is, think about things that are on the mind of our clients, right?
Mhm.
And so a lot of the things that I write about are things that I've done. Hopefully, doing it in a way not to talk about specific clients, but to just talk about things that come up in my practice. And that might be relevant to practitioners. Then, and a lot of them are not, time. So sometimes I'll write about some random thing that's on my mind that it's not like something happened in the last week, but it's just like, oh, I was just thinking about this, and I'm going to talk about it. I'm also very open to connecting, so if people sort of like my posts, then I usually will go and invite them to join my network. I never sell people on stuff. One of the things,
Yeah.
actually, I think we all feel the same way, is if you're on LinkedIn and then you make a connection and then immediately somebody's selling you something, you're like, oh my, it's like, I never do that. But I think people do want to share information. Look, and we're in this pandemic environment, so a lot of us are working at home, and so sometimes just going on. I will say that it suits me well in that for my entire adult life, I've suffered from insomnia. So sometimes in the middle of the night, I'm just thinking about something, and it's like, oh, I can just post this whenever I want. I think, I mean, obviously, sometimes I try to inject a little humor. I think it's important in any social media interactions that you have to not take yourself super seriously,
Mm,
because I think, people get into, maybe that's what Twitter's for, but people get
yeah,
into these very heated discussions. I know some people, they don't want to talk about politics, and I try not to be super political, but immigration law is just kind of political. And so
yeah,
if you're going to talk about immigration at all, you got to make some comments about politics. But, I try to, in a way, think about things from different people's perspectives. I mean, some perspectives are kind of beyond the pale for me, but I try not to be an ideologue, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think most of us who post on LinkedIn, you sort of look at the metrics and you start to realize what are the things that people, if there's a lot of views and likes to certain things, then you sort of feed that, right? I mean, it's like, he's like, oh, okay, well, it looks like people are interested in these topics. Um, so I do some of that, but I think everyone just has to, I mean, it's so individualized how you want to utilize it. But I think it's great for junior lawyers if they want to start to build a brand for themselves. I get a lot of feedback from solos, or even paralegals. One of the funny things is sometimes I get feedback from pretty well-known law firms, and I'm like, am I teaching you more than your own employer? Because you work at a famous law firm, so hopefully they're teaching you stuff. But yeah, so I think it's a good, I mean, for me, it's a great thing. I don't use any other social media. Obviously, some people will tell you, oh, Facebook is a great place to get clients or whatever. I mean, I'm not, I mean, I don't have any dispute with that, but I just chose one and sort of went all in on that. I am looking at, like, maybe setting up a blog. People have given me feedback. I mean, one of the downsides of LinkedIn posting is not really it's not very easily searchable, and
yeah,
so someone will be like, didn't that guy post something good 3 months ago? And it's like, well, good luck finding it.
yeah,
I also post articles, as you know, on lots of random topics that I think interest me or interest kind of my network. I'm sure there's lots of people who find the volume of my posts annoying, and I'm just like, well, just turn me off then. You can just, but
I think LinkedIn could see which ones you read the most, like he's pushing those forward and not the rest. They have some sort of like, it's not as hardcore as the other algorithms, but those who want to see it to a large extent.
Yeah. No,
So
and there's definitely like a creepiness factor. And recently particularly after I left and went on my own, I felt a little more comfortable to talk about certain things that I have strong feelings about, like some of the things that are going on in China with human rights. And
yeah,
I've kind of noticed that what I assume are like not real people who are Chinese are trying to link with me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know who you are, person who's not wearing much clothes in your picture and has 3 followers. Is like, I'm not going to connect with you, even though I connect with lots of people. I don't really know what's going on with that, but so that's sort of a fascinating thing. But yeah, and again, I'm not a person who says like, well, you should be on LinkedIn and you should do X.
yeah,
But I do think there's a lot of information you can get, even if you don't pay for even if you just have the basic free, profile and everything. I follow the big law firms. They post great. I mean, Fragment BAL, they post great information about legal updates. I follow them. There's a little less maybe an analytical commentary, and I mean, the bigger you get, the more everyone's afraid to say what they actually think,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
this is part of the reason that I'm on my own, because I can say what I want.
I was talking with a colleague that's one of the biggest firms, and he's like, they don't let me anything social media, just like do the work, and let's just not do it, get involved in any of that. What last
Yeah.
question? I have so many questions, but we'll definitely do it in January. But what is the value of LinkedIn Premium? I could understand if I get it. I mean, if I'm not trying to find employees or something like that, what value does the premium version of LinkedIn bring?
Well, you get a lot of metrics, right? You get information about who's looking at your posts, where they work, what part of the country they're in. Um, so I find that pretty interesting. It's fascinating to me. I'm based here in Minneapolis, but I definitely, Minneapolis is like third or fourth in most of my posts in terms of the markets of where people are. And so, that sort of stuff is interesting. You also can more easily connect. I mean, the normal system is, you can connect to the people who are like 1 degree away from you,
Yeah.
but with the premium membership, you can connect with people who are a couple degrees away from you. And I do that. I reach out to people either because they have interesting posts, or I mean, I'm one of those people that if people are liking my posts or viewing my profile, I'll just reach out to them and say, hey, do you want to, join the network? I figure it's one of those things where you just invite anyone to join the network. If they lose value in it, they can, there's
Yeah.
various ways to unsubscribe and all that. And I do try to, people will send me, people who kind of want free. We all know, I mean, people
Yeah.
will try, people want free advice. You got to create some boundaries about that. But I try to be friendly with people, try to be responsive to people. Recently, one of the things that I'm doing just in starting my own firm is, and I guess I don't want to get too carried away because probably a lot of people who listen to, but there's one or two attorneys who are pretty new. That I got connected with by LinkedIn that I'm kind of mentoring in a pretty explicit way. Like I'm helping one person; she's working on her first H-1B,
Oh,
possible H-1B cap case, and that's kind of rewarding. I mean, I just feel like I'm in a stage in my career where you want to do things where at the end of your career you can feel like, yeah, I mean, whatever. I worked for 30 years or whatever, and I helped X number of clients, but sometimes helping colleagues, and I'm pretty sympathetic to the small, solo lawyer, just trying to build something up, and so I like to do that kind of stuff and brainstorm on cases and stuff like that. Although now that I've said that, I'm probably going to regret it because
I'll tell you what, I have a CLE accreditation for state of California, and a lot of states reciprocate, and I'm opening up the Toolbox library of videos CLEs for free to immigration lawyers. Maybe we'll do a session or hour recording, maybe have people on ask questions, and we'll just have these kind of sessions, CLE kind of thing, and hopefully get a sponsor to it and make some money off it too. We'll see. But at least
Yeah,
we'll
that
get
might
that
be all
information.
right. Yeah, we can choose a topic. Maybe this EB2NIW. We can get a few people
Yeah.
to prove or disprove your theory that everyone's spaghetti against the wall or whatever. But yeah, well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, John. I really
Appreciate it.
appreciate this. I think I blew past your timeline, but
No, it's good.
hopefully,
It's good. I just on the recording, I record it on the cloud instead of my computer, so the quality of the video is going to go down, unfortunately. But I didn't want to stop you when I realized I made that mistake. The future videos quality will be good, but 98% of the audience listens to the audio. But I do encourage people. It's on YouTube, Facebook, and check out the Instagram page. We have clips of it there. It's a good seeing someone there talk. It gives a different feeling to her just hearing their voice. So
yeah,
the
yeah.
podcast is the big one. Yeah,
Well, ever since
and you guys
college,
too.
people told me I have a face for radio, so I think that's
No, no. Plus, the people have to at least check out this episode and check out your suit. If you can stand up, I'm not sure if you're wearing the pants too or not. I know
well,
in the
no,
house.
I mean, yeah, yeah. It's an above the waist kind of setup here. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot, John. Yeah, we'll catch up in the new year. Happy New Year to all your sort of listeners, subscribers. Look forward to that new issue coming out.
I appreciate it. We'll catch up with you soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot. Yep. Bye.